what's up, CMS? So awesome to be back with you guys again for week 2 of our big picture series where we're looking at the life of this guy in the Bible named Joseph. And man, his life was pretty crazy. He had some pretty unbelievable, weird, and at times even messed up things that happened to him. And just like in our own lives, though, God was working a bigger picture throughout Joseph's life. But before we kind of get into this story, I want you to think about some of the biggest L's you've ever taken in your life. For those of you who don't know what I mean by L's, that means losses. So maybe you told your crush that you liked them, but they didn't feel the same way. Or maybe you completely blew it in your football game or basketball game and your team ended up losing because of it. Or maybe you didn't get the lead in a school play, or you and your best friend are in this huge fight. One of the biggest L's I ever took in my middle school years ever is when I found out that the girl that I liked all of 7th grade felt the same way about me. But here's where the problem came. I was too chicken. I never took my chance. And by the time I really realized this or found out about this, she was dating someone else. And I don't know about you, but back then, for me, that felt like the biggest L I had taken. Especially because it could have happened, right? If I wasn't so afraid. But yeah, I took that huge L in middle school. But the point is, right, we all know what it's like to take an L in life, right? Life sometimes feels like a series of wins and losses. Sometimes you ace that test that you've been studying for a week. Other times you don't. Sometimes maybe your parents will let you stay up a little bit later to play video games with your friends. Other times, not so much. Or maybe that, crush that you have feels the same way about you and you go for it. Other times, maybe you don't, like me, and you miss out. Wins and losses, right? And obviously, we love it when we're winning. It feels like things are great and things are just really going our way. But the L's come almost as quickly as the wins do. And when the L's do come, I'm talking about like the difficult, tough, and just painful things, right? Life doesn't feel so good, right? We've all been there. We've all had times where we've dealt with our families moving or losing friends, or maybe we're dealing with divorce and brokenness at home. Maybe we're feeling it right now with COVID, right? We're not allowed to see our friends. We literally don't know what summer is going to look like. And our families might be hurting financially, right? Some of us, we may have lost loved ones. And honestly, like, taking L's really stinks. We all know these feelings. And the reality is that losses are just an unavoidable part of being human, right? There's something that everyone in life experiences, and there's things in everyone's life that cause pain, heartache, disappointment, right? When we're in the middle of it, though, it's hard to see anything other than the hurt, frustration, loneliness, and even the anger that we might be feeling because of that loss. But what if I told you that there was more to life than just wins and losses? What if there's just a much bigger picture than wins and losses? Now, if there's anyone in the Bible that understood what it's like to experience this roller coaster of wins and losses, that would be our friend Joseph. But for some context, right? Joseph was the second youngest of 12 brothers, which if you are one of the youngest siblings in your household, you can probably understand why that would be difficult at times. But this was working in Joseph's favor, is that he was his father's absolute favorite son. And everyone knew it, right? It was not a secret that he was the favorite son. And Joseph's father favored him so much so that he gave him this fancy jacket to wear around, like all blinged out and everything. So like everyone knew that he was the favorite. And I don't know about you, but if I was a clear-cut favorite in my house, I would feel pretty good about it, right? I'd feel like I'm on top of the world. There was only one slight problem to Joseph being the favorite. His brothers hated him for the way that his father loved him. His brothers absolutely hated him, right? They were jealous, they were angry, they were hurt to the point where they literally came up with a plan to deal Joseph a pretty big loss. So we'll take a look here at Genesis 37, verse 18. It says, "They saw him in the distance, and before he had reached them, they plotted to kill him." Whew! Talk about things escalating quickly, right? Joseph's siblings took it to a whole nother level. Most siblings would just like shove you in a closet or lock you outside of the house or maybe, I don't know, make fun of you in front of your friends. But Joseph's siblings, they plotted to kill him. Like, that's bananas. But let's see what happens next. So Genesis 37, verses 23 through 24. "So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern," which, if you guys don't know what that is, it's pretty much like a really deep well where people like went and grabbed water and stuff. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. So Joseph's brothers like took his special robe and he threw him into a well. Right? If that were me in Joseph's shoes, I would feel like that was the ultimate loss. That was the biggest L he'd probably taken in his whole life up to that point. Right? So his brothers had just betrayed him. They had just stolen from him, and he was left at the bottom of a well. Like, what could be worse than being at the bottom of a well and your brothers just betrayed you? But as the story continues, we kind of see, a different side, right? So instead of killing him, right? Great, they didn't kill him. What a relief. They decided to sell him into slavery. Not only that, but they took his robe, soaked it in blood, and took it back to their dad, right? And their dad thought that he had been killed, right? This is like a reality TV story or something. Like, reality TV doesn't have anything on the Bible. Everything in Joseph's life had been changed up to this point, and not for the better, right? He was taking L after L after L. And while your story might not be the same as Joseph's, I know we can all relate to feeling loss and pain in our lives. The worst part about this story is that Joseph never even had a chance to speak or respond to what was happening before it happened to him, right? He literally had no control over everything that was going on. And I know that it can feel like that sometimes in our lives too, right? We find ourselves in situations that leave us feeling hopeless, or they feel difficult and painful. We feel like out of control, and there are no words to describe it, right? We have no power and no control. And just like Joseph, there isn't anything that we can do to stop it. Those are some of the worst feelings to have in a situation, aren't they? Right? Isn't it hard to see the bigger picture when we're in the midst of a situation like that? When we feel like it's hard to believe that God is working on a bigger picture, right? It's hard to believe that there's a bigger story that we just can't see in the moment. But then we see a few chapters later in the story, right? There's a simple verse that kind of gives us an idea of what the bigger picture was in this moment. And it's something that we ourselves can hold on to in the midst of pain and losses. It's Genesis 39, verse 2, the first part of verse 2. It says, "The Lord was with Joseph." 5 words. That's it. All right? When his brothers were attacking him, when he was thrown into a well, when he was sold into slavery, God was with Joseph. Even when he couldn't see it, or he didn't feel it, or he had no idea of what was going to happen next, God was with him. And that's the big picture that we want you to see here, right? In the good and the bad, God was with Joseph. And just like he's with Joseph, God is with you in the midst of your losses, in the midst of your trials, in the midst of your pain, in the midst of all the goodness that happens also. God is right there. When it's hard to see the bigger picture, remember God is with you. Whatever you're going through, good, bad, or indifferent, God is with you. And that's the truth that we just need to hold on to that'll get us through whatever we're going through. All right. And that phrase, right? God is with you. It can be a little bit confusing at times, right? Like, what does that even mean? Sometimes we think that God is just going to change our circumstances to be how we want them to be. That's what we think God is with us means. So if we were to be stuck in, let's say, a pit, right? God is going to pull us out and just turn things around. But as we see in the story of Joseph, that was a yes and a no, right? God is working out for our good. He wants what's best for our lives. So whatever loss or pain you're going through, we can trust that he will make things better in his time. It might not happen right away, and it really might not happen the way that we expect it to. All right, that's a huge thing that we have to understand, is that God is working things out for our best, but it's not always how we think it would be. But while we are waiting, because sometimes there is waiting, God is with us. He's not leaving us alone. And when you can't see the picture, the bigger picture, we have to understand that God is with us. And we can start doing that by doing two things, right? Remind yourself daily of the truth, right? Write it on a note, post it on your mirror or on your phone or whatever, that God is with you as a reminder. And then second is look for God's presence. It's one thing to say God is with us and to believe it's true, but it's another thing entirely to begin seeing him working with us. And that could be through music. It could be through nature, scripture. It could be through friends. It could be through family. But this week, as you remember God is with you, keep your eyes open to see him in your everyday life. And it's going to help you no matter what the circumstances are. When you can't see the bigger picture, remember, God is with you.